All right, so picking up right where we left off, we're now going to look at creating the cap for this tonic bottle here. So we're going to grab the loop at the top, go into our front view, and I'm going to duplicate it with Shift D. Now, it may be tempting to try to do a Control C, Control V, but we use Shift D in Blender to duplicate things. And I'm going to tap right click to reset the location of these vertices. Now you'll notice that what's happened here, if I hit G, it's still got those vertices, they're just overlapping. Now if for any reason you forget that you have overlapping vertices, there's a number of different ways to check this and make sure that you don't have overlapping vertices. And the reason we don't want them is if I click here and I try to do a manipulation, you'll see it's not acting the way I would expect it to if, say, I grab something over here. See, that is predictable. The mesh is moving according to that vertex that I've grabbed. This one is weird. It's not doing what I want it to do. And so I might go, well, why isn't it doing that? And maybe it's because I created an extra set of vertices and I forgot it there. And that can give us a lot of problems. This problem can also be encountered when we extrude something and reset it and forget about that as well. So here is how I will show you to solve this issue. If you hit Alt-Z and go into your X-ray mode and then drag select around the troubled area, and you must make sure that you're in X-ray mode to do this. If you do this in solid mode and you try to just grab them, you'll notice that not everything is selected. You can run into even more problems. So make sure you're in X-ray mode and grab them. And I'm going to turn on something over here inside our viewport overlays called statistics. This should be on by default, in my opinion. I don't know why Blender made it an optional thing. They used to project all of this information down here in the right corner. And I know that there's some way to turn it on, but they've hidden it in the menu. So I tend to just use the statistics option here. That seems to do what I want it to do. And so we can see here that we have 48 vertices selected when there's really only supposed to be 16 of them. So to get rid of those vertices that are overlaid on top of each other with all of them selected, we see we have all 48. We're going to right click and say merge vertices by distance. And you'll see in the lower right hand corner, removed 32 vertices. And now we have those 16 selected rather than the 48 overlapping that we had before. So that's just a good thing to note, good practices. So I do need to duplicate this again with Shift D, and then we're going to right click to reset it. And we're going to keep in mind that it's still there with that selection active. Go to the front view, and I'm just going to scale this out to roughly the size of the cap. And then I'm going to hit GZ and move it down to the bottom here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit E and Z and just extrude this up to roughly here. And this is going to represent the smooth part of the cap. And then I'm going to make another extrusion straight up, and then another one up here, and I'm just going to scale it in just like so. And that's more or less the beginnings of our cap, and we just need to close the top similarly to how we did on the bottom. So I'm going to hit the F key and create an N-gon, and I'm going to look for this top vertex and this bottom one, shift selecting and hit J. Same thing with the left and right one, shift select and J. And then I'm going to do the same I did before. I'm going to connect these, and I'm going to show you another trick. Instead of using J, we can also use the knife tool, which is activated with the K key. And you'll see that when I move the knife around, it shows this green vertex underneath the knife. That means I can click there and create a vertex and make a cut. So I could do something like this, for example. I'm just going to hit escape or right click to cancel that. Let's hit K again. And you'll see that when I hover over an existing vertex, it has a red outline. So that's what I want. I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to hover over this one, and I'm going to click there and hit enter to accept that cut. So the knife tool can be really useful for adding additional geometry. The join tool, or connect tool as sometimes it's called, is good for just connecting existing geometry together. So in this case, I can use the J key to do that. And then of course, I'm going to grab these 9 vertices and smooth them out like I did previously. Now I'm going to hit Control plus on the number pad and do a minor inset and just scale this in a tiny bit. Then we're going to extrude it down on the Z axis just a little bit, scale it in a little more, and then do another inset and scale in just like this. And the reason why, in fact, I'm going to just move this up a little bit. I don't want it to be that much. The reason why I did that is because if I want to turn this into a film ready prop, if I go back into object mode and hit shade smooth, then I have those retaining loops there that I can bevel after I select them. I can bevel them. Let's switch into edge mode. I can bevel them and get a little more additional detail out of them, something like this. And then I can add a subdivision surface modifier. And you can see now we have much more control over that edge. It's not falling apart. And we can get that really high density mesh model there out of that if we need it. Now, like I said, I'm not going to be doing that, so I'm just going to delete that. I'll undo this, and we'll go back to this, and this is fine the way it's set up here. I do want to bevel this edge right here, so I'm going to select that with an Alt-click and just bevel it out. Holding down the Shift key will also constrain how far it goes, and I'm just going to use, instead of having 3 there, I'm going to scroll down on my mouse wheel just so that it's 2. And then we're going to do the same thing on this bottom lip. However, we need to create an inward extrusion, so we're going to hit E, right-click to reset its movement, and then scale it in like this. And then I'm going to Alt-click this, and then use a small bevel there, just so it catches a little bit of the light there in the bottom. And it's also being affected by the weighted modifier here that we added before. All right, so there we go. We've created the cap, and that's more or less what we're looking for in creating this bottle. I'm debating if I want to bevel some of these edges here, such as the 2 that I've selected, maybe the 3 now that I've selected, just like this, just to give it some additional geometry to smooth out those edges so that they don't look so faceted. I can also select this one, right-click, and say there is a Laplation smooth that I can use. So press the spacebar key and say Laplation, smooth vertices Laplation, and sometimes it will smooth them out, sometimes it won't. Let's try in vertex mode and see if that changes anything. So here, if I right-click, I can say smooth Laplation or just smooth vertices. It turns out the smooth vertices was the one I wanted all along. I could also just try to dissolve that, and it looks like dissolving that is fine as well. So one thing that you kind of have to struggle with as an asset designer for games is to ask yourself, how much geometry do I need? So I'm going to dissolve this edge. I'm going to put a loop cut here in the middle, and then I'm going to turn my smoothness up to 1. And there we go. That kind of smooths that out. Do I need this one here? Probably not. And I can probably dissolve these 2, but those are the ones I believe I put in for the label. So I'm going to leave those alone. I think I can dissolve that one and take this one and bevel that out with a couple of edges there. And then there, that's looking okay. And then here, I'm just going to add in a couple, just like that, to keep this relatively even in terms of spacing. And yeah, I will look into dissolving some of these again later, because it's getting a little bit much. So something like this is okay. I'm going to leave it though, because like I said, it's kind of a mid poly that I'm going for. I'm not really going for a low poly, although we could get away with it. I do want to have some reasonable silhouette to this, so it's not all faceted around the edge. I think this is a good compromise where we're at. If you're looking at a very tight budget for your game or something like this, and you don't want this much geometry, which in all honesty, this isn't that much, then you can dissolve some of these extra edges just like that, and that'll work perfectly fine. You know, I'm just going to leave them in for now. Okay, so we finished the cap, we finished the bottom. I'm just going to save this now. I'm going to call this tonic, and I'm just going to save it into the project directory. And then we need to move on to getting some detail and projecting things in a UV map. So it looks like we've been going on for another video here. I'm going to end it here, and in the next one, we're going to talk about UV layout and baking some detail from a high poly mesh to a low poly mesh in the next video. So make sure you join me for that. Thanks for watching.